Okay, we're live. Hey, Jim, how are you doing? Today, I'm I want to kind of have a real candid conversation and an interaction uh, with all my Patreon subscribers. Um, there's a few people that come on every week and whatnot. However, there are many more that perhaps because it's the Sabbath or their religious convictions or whatever, which is fine. They watch these things later. Um, but I have a group of about 20 people that are avid supporters of what I'm doing here with this rocket stove. So I wanted to have a real kind of, it's Independence Day. It's the 4th of July. A lot of it has got me thinking, and what does this rocket stove mean? What does it mean for me? I've been working on this thing for 4 years, and I just, I don't know. I think it's time. I've always been really, um, I'm very conservative minded, but I've always been really careful on like YouTube or publicly not to discuss anything political or whatnot. But this is kind of a private forum, and so I'm going to go ahead and maybe do that a little bit. Jim Allen says, hello from the warm mountains of Northeast San Diego County. I'll bet it's warm there. Hey, Tim, how are you doing? Good afternoon to you as well. Um, I have my reading glasses on today because I'm going to be doing a little bit of maybe a little bit of reading. But this Patreon is all about the rocket stove, and I just want to kind of get a sense for people that are my supporters, what it is that they value about it and kind of what their principles are with regard to it, any social responsibilities and things like that. um I've gone back and forth with different people who have been working on rocket stoves and built rocket stoves in the past. And I was just recently watching a video from a gentleman in the UK who did a review on the Liberty rocket stove, and he's g- known as an expert in the UK on these rocket stoves. Uh, However, I mean, he said some things about the firebox and that you can't insulate it and whatnot. And I know he's taking kind of a direct meaning toward me because I did do it, and he's absolutely right. It does melt out if you use steel in it. Um, but coming up with this solution of the firebox being a 3 to 4,000 degree refractory mix kind of changed the game extensively. And to that point, as Melanie and I have spent hundreds and hundreds of hours burning this thing, uh, all this past winter, it even amazes me about what I accomplished. And then when Dirk Perrin chimed in and told me about some of his experiments with my burn box, and then when I recreated them, it just it just blew my mind even more about it. And essentially, when this thing is burning, because it is a 3,000 degree firebox and it has an energy containment apparatus around it with a high temp insulator, it keeps the heat where you want it to be kept. and essentially, it'll, I can just cut a live tree down and put a live branch in there, and it'll burn it just fine, even though it's like 70% water. It actually burns a green flame, and I've been studying a lot about high temperature steam electrolysis, and that is um, when steam gets to a certain temperature, and then it splits off, and the hydrogen is released out of it. Um, and I believe that has been what's happening. And people ask me why, and I tell them because I'm a realist. I'm a realist, and when you have wood gases and steam all intermixed and intertwined with each other in an environment where, regardless of the steam, the wood gas is going to flash, what ends up happening is, for a split second, when that flash happens, it's 3 or 4,000 degrees immediately, just for a split second. And then all these vapors are right around it, and it heats them up instantaneously. And just for a split second, some of the hydrogen is released out of it, because of the high temperature. And what we end up getting is the I mean, it makes no smoke, it makes no odor. It is just amazing to me how this thing burns. And in all honestly, how I see it is, it's almost like a middle finger to the elites. All these people that are wanting to shut down, control the energy, and they want to shut down gas stoves, and they want to shut down wood burning apparatuses, and there's all these regulations surrounding wood burning apparatuses. And um, I just think that it's absolutely crazy, because we actually have the technology to create stoves that burn so clean and so efficiently that the the carbon emissions is almost undetectable in it. And so, um, but like I said earlier, it is the 4th of July. It is Independence Day. And I am just looking to find out and get some interactions from um, people in this small group of people. There's only about 20 or 25 of us that watch this thing every week, and and are following it because it means something to them. And to me, um, Melanie and I have sunk everything into this. We uprooted our family, and we moved to a an off-grid property, because we honestly, if I was just flush with cash and had the money, I would have bought a place that already had a house and everything. But we've suffered through a lot of difficult hardships to get to this point. And we've just kind of laid down everything on the line, and I've put my family right in the crosshairs as well. Um, but that being said, I just think you guys deserve to know what I'm thinking about this, and what it means to me, and what I want the legacy of it to be moving forward. Uh, Yesterday, I did a live show. Jim Allen says, I'm looking to be independent from propane suppliers for heat. Well, that's awesome. Um, Tim Fox says the refractory mix for the firebox was an inspired solution. Now to find the ideal aircrete mix and depth of insulation to insulate sufficiently to protect the outer shell. He's absolutely correct. And I just got through taking a couple of weeks ago. I showed you guys the new monolithic form pour. I just got through pouring that box, and it just inspired all sorts of other ideas, that I could run the fire through a cooking surface and then out the um, some insulated stovepipe, to keep it moving. And just different applications of it, ways to maybe put a a coil and create a hot water pump that pumps steam in the top of the downdraft shroud that would pump steam up into any room through radiators. There's just all sorts of uh, solutions that could happen for making this a viable, something viable for people to heat their homes with. And um, that being said, I want to be able to move forward knowing, I guess, what my end goal is and what it is, and just being honest with you guys about what my end goal is. Um, I I don't necessarily really like the way uh, the direction that our country is going in, and that's a lot of the reason why I decided to move up here in the mountains. Um, Alexander Tyler, he wrote about the fall of the Athenian Republic, and this is what he wrote, is received by a reader. About the time our original 13 states adopted their new constitution in 1787, Alexander Tyler, a Scottish historian professor at the University of Edinburgh, had this to say about the fall of the Athenian Republic some 2,000 years prior. A democracy is always temporary in nature. It simply cannot exist as a permanent form of government. A democracy will continue to exist up until the time the voters discover that they can vote themselves generous gifts from the public treasury. From that moment on, the majority always vote for the candidates who promise the most benefits from the public treasury, with the result that every democracy will finally collapse due to loose fiscal policy, which is always followed by a dictatorship. The average age of the world's greatest civilization from the beginning of history has been about 200 years. During those 200 years, these nations always progress through the following sequence. They go from bondage to spiritual faith, from spiritual faith to great courage, and from courage to liberty and freedom, from liberty to abundance, and from abundance, they go back into complacency, and from complacency to apathy, and from apathy back into dependence. From dependence, they are back into bondage. And Professor Joseph Olson of Hamline University School of Law, St. Paul, Minnesota, points out some interesting facts concerning the 2000 presidential election. Population of countries won by Gore was about 127 million, and Bush, it was 143 million square miles of land. Uh, but the square miles of land won by Gore was only about 500,000 square miles, and the Bush won 2.5 million square miles of states that were won. And Gore won 19 and Bush won 29. And the murder rate per 100,000 residents in counties won by Gore was 13.2. And the murder rate in counties won by Bush was 2.1, not 13.2. Um, and Professor Olson also adds, in aggregate, the map of the territory Bush won was mostly the land owned by the tax-paying citizens of this great country. Gore's territory mostly encompassed those citizens living in government-owned tenements and living off of government welfare. And the reason I bring this up is because it is Independence Day, and I see this rocket stove as being like a big middle finger almost to the elites, the ones that are moving us into dependence, and they're wanting us to uh, be completely dependent. They want to be able to move public opinion by doing rolling blackouts and controlling the energy. And I like the idea that this stove is a personal power plant for people that they can use and whatnot. And so I kind of want to get a sense for all the people who are come on, and what do they think? Do they think I should ever discuss anything about politics and how this stove will uh, play into that, or they just want me to just keep kind of biting my tongue and whatnot? So I'm gonna take some questions now, or some comments as well. Um, okay. Tim Fox says hi from Mesa, Arizona. Good, thanks. Dirk Pearson, have you burnt your monolithic pour? Did you put the outside air intake in it with the melt out tubes in it? On this first one that I poured, I just put it solid, and I'm doing it in the normal configuration. But I have another one that I'm doing with the outside air to move into it, which I'm really actually excited about that one. I haven't burned it yet. I haven't even taken it out of the form. So I just poured it a day or so ago. And our HGG says hi from Missouri. Tim Fox says it's 109 this afternoon. Well, it's going to be winter soon enough. Jim Ellen says we. Jason Christoph says good afternoon, Darwin. Um, and Jim Allen said they're passing the 90-degree Fahrenheit there. Oh, what'd I do? Antonio Sanford says hello from Tennessee. Antonio Sanford, I sent you the information on the grow stones. I hope that helps. I really appreciate that, Antonio. I want to be able to look into that and see if it's something that can be recreated. Um, ooh. And Bernard Flood says, greetings from Ireland. Hi, guys. I'd love to see more Aircrete content and more about your stove. It's 11:15 p.m. here and 60 degrees Fahrenheit. I have a fire burning, and it's supposed to be rainy for the next week. Now, that being said, we live up where kind of the Rocky Mountains meet the Bitterroot Mountains up in North Idaho, um, not too far from Canada. And so actually in June, I lit my rocket stove uh, 4 or 5 different times because we had weather down in the 30s at night and 40s. And so um, it's it's really it's really great that we actually have this and we can use it and whatnot. Okay. Antonio Stanford said there's too much politics. Concentrate on the science. It's far more useful and interesting. Well, I I agree with that. Um, I really do.
You missed one too that said, I think focus on independence, such as being off grid, technology, methods, etc.
Oh, Mrs. Honeydew just pointed out that I missed a comment and that it said focus more on independence and off being. Who sent that comment, babe?
Jason, Chris.
Oh.
It's the third from the bottom.
Oh, I see. He said Rome didn't end well either. Yeah. Um, Jason, Chris says infrared. What percent is reflected? Yeah. Jim Allen says don't bite your tongue. So we're getting kind of some uh mixed things here. I think they're, you know what? I was looking at some things that my dad had written, and I had copied down from some of his mentors. And I let me. There was something that played right into that. Um, yeah, here it is, and for whatever reason, my dad called it the law of counsel to others. I believe it is so important for leaders to learn to speak out in a way that is persuasive without being heavy handed or offensive. The problem with most of us is that we are afraid to stand up for what we believe, to be witness for what is true and right, and we want to do the right thing, but we are troubled by our own fears. So we sit back and the world drifts about us as society increasingly adopts attitudes and standards of behavior of which most of us don't approve. And I kind of feel like we're in that right now. I've seen lots of different videos of late where congressmen are getting up and they're questioning people under oath, and they're asking them if they know, do you know what percentage of Democrats agree with, a certain policy or whatnot? And it's just insane when you find out that the majority of everybody, Republican, Democrat, they all are in disagreement with the way the public culture is moving, but for whatever reason, it's still moving that way. And I think that little bit of advice that my dad gave me, rest his soul, try and learn to be persuasive without being heavy handed, um, may be some good advice. And so, Tim Fox says if you generate steam via the rocket stove, a steam turbine for generation of electricity to be stored in a battery for home uses uh, would be a worthwhile project. Yeah, it actually would, because the thing is, if you put an inline steam turbine um, behind the steam pump, that steam could still be piped through radiators, and you could get the best of both worlds. You could get it to generate some electricity and continue to uh, direct the heat to wherever you want to in a residence. Um, R RHGG says, I like conservatives speaking up. And you know what? I do too. I like people to speak up, but at the same time, I understand what other people are saying. Concentrate on the science of it. You want to be persuasive without being heavy-handed and whatnot as well. Firehawk Fire and Safety says hi from Northeast New Mexico. Um, and here's the one that Jason said. I think focus on independence, such as being off grid technologies, methods, etc. And I agree with that. And we're moving in that direction. We're beginning to do some more Aircrete projects and some experimenting with Dustcrete, which is sawdust in Aircrete, which I'm really excited about, because you're taking something that's uber flammable and then you encase it in Aircrete, and then all of a sudden you can put a torch on it and it's not flammable anymore. And if you fill up those hollow spaces in your walls with it, what I like about it is it's it's very thick, almost like a dough, and so it can be molded into place. Um, and so I'm just doing some different experiments with different things and aircrete that we can, excuse me, put into our walls. Um, that is, I right now I'm working with engineers at the University of South Wales. They asked me to come up with a foaming solution for a particular product that they have engineered, which it's called Ember Guard, and it's to prevent
It's not a
fires.
foaming solution. They already have it.
Oh no, yeah, okay, maybe I misspoke. They already have the foaming solution, but they wanted me to come up with an apparatus that would make it foam similarly to the way my foam makes an adjuvant and water foam up. And so I was able to, they sent me some of their product and I was able to actually accomplish that for them, which the main financier of it and the guy over it all said that I was the only one that was able to solve it for him. But I'm working with these guys and they're really passionate about building codes and what building products and what homes are being built out of, because they're essentially like building homes that are like matchstick ends. And as soon as they get lit on fire, there's no stopping it. They can't even put it out by spraying water on it. And a lot of it has to do with the different, like this OSB board behind me has lots of chemicals and glues that press all those wood chips together. And the flammable rate of that stuff when it gets up to a certain temperature, they can't even get it to put out. And so the idea behind what I'm doing here by putting aircrete in the walls is I'm sealing off all these little chimneys. Like if you get a fire in your wall and whatnot, um, it basically becomes a little chimney and it just will keep burning from the inside out. And all you need is just a little bit of air in the bottom, and it will just keep fluing and burning, and there's nothing they can do to put it out. And so I'm working with these engineers at the University of South Wales. They sent me an email and they asked me if I could come up with a solution for their foaming of their product, and I did that. But that is also another political issue because you know the the building code lobby, they they come up with a product, whether it's good or flammable or not, and whether it's really good for public interest, they push it and they get it pushed through and put into the building codes, and it might not necessarily be the best thing. And so eventually I would like to create enough awareness of aircrete and different solutions for using aircrete in walls, whether it be with sawdust or um, with paper and EPS. They have the um, fire mitigating um, stuff that they treat a paper with a chemical, and then you blow it in, and it's supposed to help with fires and whatnot. But if you use that stuff and put aircrete and EPS into it or whatever, um, it's kind of crazy because you can just put a torch to it and it won't burn. And if you completely fill all the air spaces in your walls with it, you essentially have a house that's nearly fireproof. And so that's another thing I'm really one of the big reasons I came up with this rocket stove in the first place was all the chimney fires. Um, Billions of dollars worth of damage every year in the United States because of chimney fires, loss of life, and everything else. And this rocket stove doesn't create creosote. It just doesn't. And so it is a mitigating measure for those things. And to get into other manufacturers to adopt um, the same principles that make the stove work, I think would end up eventually being a good thing. Antonio Sanford says, I would like to see you do more collaboration videos with other YouTubers, like Aircrete Harry and Night Hot Like. Um, that is actually a fantastic idea. And right now we have some collaborations in the works, with other people. And I've actually built a rocket stove that has a tile shell all around it that acts kind of like a ductwork. And as the downdraft shroud gets warm and as the stove gets warm, the air just flues up around through it. And um, that is another thing that I want to do some collaborations with some other YouTubers, so that they can have these things in their home and they can review them. And then, we can see what other people think about them. Tim Fox said, please extend my regards to Mrs. Honeydew. I did not see her earlier in the chat. Okay. Antonio Sanford says, Dustcrete sounds like Starlight. And Herbert Wall says, hello from central Minnesota. Boy, we got a lot of people on today. It's really, really awesome, guys. The reason I chose this topic to talk about was just simply because it's the 4th of July, it's Independence Day, and I just kind of wanted you guys to get a sense of why I'm doing what I'm doing and trying to create all these solutions, with regards to heating our homes and energy and stuff like that. And Jason also says, I think your stove is brilliant, especially as you're fine tuning it. Yeah, I am uber excited about this monolithic pour core. I just simply make a box out of cedar, um, and then put a form around it and pour the thing all around it. And so, um, once it's installed in the stove and the energy containment, the aircrete is poured around it, you'll just start a fire in it and just burn out the center of your form. And so every time you make one, I'm going to have to make another box. But that's really cheap in comparison to what other people are doing. The Styro Aircrete guy has modified his formula. No more foam, just styrofoam and cement. He and new business partner are now setting up courses for budget home construction under code. And yeah, I've looked into that. And in fact, I went up to uh, and man, I went up to Colorado to Aircrete Harry's, and we did a workshop where they did papercrete, where they mixed the paper insulation and styrofoam into it with no air, and it worked really well. It ends up being a lot heavier, and it's not as insulative. However, um, there are some great benefits. I mean, you can just screw a screw right into it, and um, it's insulative enough, but it is a little bit stronger. However, it is a little more dense than Aircrete. So that's kind of what drives me to keep doing experiments with Aircrete. And the fact that I can use Aircrete in a high temperature application, as an energy containment. It's really what makes the rocket stove work, um, in conjunction with the 3,000-degree firebox. So, I'm kind of getting the sense that Jason says layers of different uh, create materials. I'm not sure if I understand that, Jason. But anyways, I just really kind of wanted to get your guys' opinions on um, what caused you to have interest in the stove, and really what the end game is, for you, and what application it is that you guys want to use it in. And Jason says, oh, in a wall, layers of different crete materials in the wall. Yeah, I'm gonna experiment and do different sections of my house with different types of. Some it's going to be a dustcrete, which is the sawdust with Aircrete. Some of it's going to be EPS peanuts with Aircrete. Some of it's going to be that ground up, and some of it's just going to be normal Aircrete. And then I'm going to be able to take a thermal imagery camera when it gets cold enough outside and kind of determine uh, which really performs the best. And it's going to be kind of a fun experiment. So as far as the independence and off-grid stuff, I also am gonna want to do, because I'm putting up a solar system right now, and I want to be able to uh, augment that solar system with some micro hydro, because in the winter time you get very little sun. And however, I do have a seasonal creek that runs through here, and I have, a good 100-foot drop from where it starts, and so I want to be able to run a pipe up the creek bed, pressurize it, and run it into a micro hydro plant. Antonio Sanford says, have you considered different types of aircrete in layers to create different effects? Um, I I have, um, but it just seems like logistically it would increase the workload tremendously, because if you're mixing up one mix design, you want to just pour that form completely full. I guess if you pour it half full and then make another mix and maybe do a shell of the like the paper crete with EPS in it on the inside of your house, so that you can drive nails to put pictures and whatnot. That, because Aircrete is inherently crumbly, that would be a good solution. VESC says, why? Wood plus efficiency plus practical. Not constantly loading. Would love to see it burn into CHB, combined heat and power. There are a number of these that run on nanogas, etc. So I would like you to elaborate, Mr. VESC, a little bit on that, and then I'll compliment or comment on it. I think I have an idea of what you're getting after there. Antonio Sanford says, congratulations on your solar and micro hydro. Definitely keep us posted on that. Beaver Creek laser design. The stove, interested because of low consumption of fuel and the safety it offers. No visible smoke, and that is advantageous. Yeah, with I actually have fielded several calls from people in California where they have huge regulatory things on wood stoves and being able to burn them. And I mean, if your neighbor turns you in, you're uh, screwed. And so I have people who are wanting to be able to burn it without an odor and without smoke. And that is actually a real big deal. And the fact that it burns clean enough to do that is what is makes the stove super cool anyway. Um, RG or RHGG says I second the above cement. So as far as not constantly loading, I got with uh, Dirk Perrin and I've recreated it many, many dozens of times over. And I'm able to just stuff my wood box full. Um, Once you get it up to temperature, just stuff it full and shut it down with just barely a little bit of air. And because of the energy containment apparatus around the firebox, it will just slow burn. Durg will go up to 6 hours with his. I've got it to go up to 4 hours with mine, meaning there's still coals in there, and you just shove more wood in, and it just takes right off. And so there are configurations we can put this in, and that's what Durg was asking about earlier in this chat about the glue stick holes taking outside air in right into the vortex. Um, it works, and that is something that I am going to do. In fact, that's going back to the original one that I ever made for Julie with Dirt Patch Heaven. So CHP usually is a generator that uses the waste heat to heat water for domestic hot water or in-floor radiant. Rocket stove would work the other way. Generate heat, use some of that to generate power. Yeah, and I could easily do that with a steam pump, and it would create a lot of steam pretty quickly. And then because it creates its own pressure to energize, I could run it through a recondenser, and then it would just run right back into the same reservoir that the water came from. It would condense back into water, and it would just constantly flow through. It would become steam back into water, steam back into water. It would go through radiators, and it would go through um, a steam generator. Kenny Bean says, "Hey, hey, from East Washington. Hope all is well." So nice to hear from you, Kenny. Um, Kenny Beans, I we met with him in Idaho Falls once, and he is an interesting guy, and he has a lot going on with hydroponics and different things up in Washington, and that is something that Mrs. Honeydew is extremely interested in, because I'm doing some solar panel mounts that are essentially greenhouses as well at the same time, and we're really excited about being able to grow our own food and whatnot. Um, Indoor radiant is great. Warm floors are good. Yes, they are. And that was one of my original ideas in this house and kind of the way I built it. Was, I'm hoping to eventually one day, and I think I'll start with just one room, like Mrs. Honeydew's bedroom. And I want to do some experiments with that and do a heat pump through the radiant floor. And the way I want to do it is we already have a slab in place. So I just want to pour 1.5 inches of Aircrete. And then I'll just take little staples and push it into the Aircrete around a PEX pipe that goes back and forth under the floor. And then I'll pour maybe another um, inch or 1.5 inches of hard cement on top of that. That way we have the insulative layer, and it would radiate the floor up into essentially a thermal mass. And once that thermal mass got warm, it would really level out the temperatures in the home, meaning if it's really cold and you're running your stove a lot, it's also heating up that thermal mass on the floor, which would end up being several thousand pounds of thermal mass, and that stuff would stay warm for hours and hours and hours, even after the stove shut off. And so I really think that is a good way to just level out the heat generation in the home. Do you know how to build such a steam system with all the necessary safety stuff? Yeah, I do. I've looked into them and I've seen lots of different plans and drawings. I also looked into these different commercial foam generators, and I have this 7 by 7 layer invention process that I use to go down and ask myself questions about different components of different machines like that. And I basically ask those questions so that I can eliminate something that it doesn't necessarily need to be there. And you guys can see the result with the foam mate. I took a huge drawings and plans of a commercial foam generator, and I just made it into something that anybody can make or use in their backyard. And um, with that being said, you can make a really safe one as long as the one-way valves are all in the correct direction. Um, you can make a really safe one. Antonio Sanford says, "Have you ever thought about getting into the game of 3D printing? I would love to see if Aircrete can be thick enough for 3D printing." Now, you know what's fascinating about that is I've been dabbling in that and researching it for 4 years plus. And Aircrete is inherently thin. It's really watery. However, if you mix certain chemicals into Portland cement, you can get it to thicken up very, very quickly. In fact, in any of these concrete wall 3D printed homes, they have an injection system that injects chemicals in, and then it goes through a spiral mixer to mix it in so that the cement, it starts to set up very quickly and becomes stiff right out of the end of the tube. And then by the time it gets all the way around the house and goes to make another layer, it's stiff enough that it'll hold up the weight of the next layer up, and so on and so forth. So the layer that's 3 layers down, it's had 3 or 4 times as much time. And there is a way to do that. However, it's only been done with normal concrete. And I really couldn't see a way to do it with Aircrete. That being said, after mixing like sawdust with Aircrete and whatnot, and how thick it is, I think some experiments could be done uh, that way, because the structure of the sawdust in the Aircrete makes it a lot thicker. And if you were able to inject those in and run it through a spiral mixer, um, when I say a spiral mixer, it's being forced through a tube that has spirals in it that mix it back and forth. So that's what mixes the chemical in homogeneously before it comes out the end of the tube. I really think it could be done with Aircrete as long as it had something like sawdust in it. And so that is something that I think is worth being pursued, even on a 3D printing type situation. Um, Beaver Creek Laser Design uh, is at Kenny Beans. Do you put any content on YouTube about hydroponics? Oh, Beaver Creek's wanting to know if Kenny Beans does anything on YouTube with hydroponics. Gail Schindeman. Hi, my bud. So glad to see you. I want to get all the info on the rocket stove and other Aircrete formulas for a house in the desert. Well, that's awesome. Send me an email, Gail. If I'm not mistaken, was it Gail, Melanie, that did um, the what are those paperback books that
The comic book?
yeah, the comic book cover for us.
I don't know.
I'm pretty sure it was Gail that did the comic book cover for us. But guys, this has been a really, really good chat. It is Independence Day this weekend, and you know it's the 4th is on Tuesday. Have a great 4th. I love you guys. I'm glad to get your input back on a lot of these things that I'm working on. Tim Fox says thanks for the live session, and I am working on being able to split my screen so that I can be on one and I can have with the camera, but I can be like on a drawing configuration so that I can show you guys the drawings of the things I'm talking about. So just stay tuned for that as well. Yeah, good info. We'll have to watch it again. Happy 4th to you and the family. Take care. And Jim Allen says, aye. All right. See you guys later. It's been about an hour and I am signing off. I'll talk to you guys later. Love y'all. Bye. Oh, Jim Allen says, I am impressed with how sharp the other subscribers are. Yeah, I'm impressed as well. Thanks, guys.